Well, it's crept round to Friday at last, and two things have turned up for this 110. The metal binnacle. It's kind of a nice one actually. So they always get a little bit different. Now they've got these little adjustable brackets on here, and also the controller for the heater is here. This is just a manual control, no fancy electronics or anything like that, so that's going to go good. The only downside about that is if I move the camera across, I've got to do some magic on this one, on this timer thing. I'll have to make an insert to cover over the hole because that's going to be too big. Now fitting this, I've noticed I can't get the camera in this at the same time. This has only got 1, 2, 3, 4 mounting points on because it's kind of rigid, and the plastic one's got 6. No doubt they'll all break off, but not a long job to do. The bottom bolts are a bit tricky to get into, but not impossible. Yeah, so let's get that boxed up. So let's see if we can get this job out of the way for the weekend and get paid for it, because there's not much I can do after that. They can do that. The seat turned out really nice. I've reinforced up the seat runners and things like this so the seat's nice. And if they want to do the other side, well, they can copy what's been done here. It took me quite a long time to work out how to do the seats. Talking of seats, I've got that 90 to do a recross member, and it's got some really oddball seats in it, and I haven't quite worked out how to get them out because I need to disconnect the battery for welding, and they didn't think about putting a switch in to isolate the battery. So the guy rang me up yesterday and he says, "You got to take the seat out." It was just like, well, I've got to take the seat out. You'll see it later. Anyway, less of that rambling. Let's get on and let's get this out. Oh, I got the old one out. They certainly had good life out of it. Look at that. There's nothing left of it. There's bits everywhere. They've tried to fasten it up with some metal straps. Kaput. Now, to get to the bottom bolt here, which is kind of tricky, take out the heater duct, you know, that goes to your vent, then you can get into it. And if you're still struggling, use one of these flexible drives, 1/4 inch drive. They're kind of easy to get out. They're only 8mm bolts, but for some reason, unbeknown to Land Rover, that they put a nut and bolt through the top of here instead of a captive nut, which means taking this piece off. If I was you, just in case you lose the nut, like I did, I couldn't balance it on my finger, put a little magnet down there to attract the nut as it falls off, because it's only one of those little chaps there. Otherwise you've got to take all this bottom heater piece off, you know, this, well, windscreen wiper cover. But if you've got air conditioning, you've got to drop the air conditioning back to get that cover off. Tipsy. Right, let me get this bolted on, and then we'll see what it's like. It certainly had some action, that back panel. It's all bent and twisted. Bloody hell. Anyway, let's get it on and see what it looks like. Well, that didn't take long. Yeah, the 4 bolts really help. And you don't have to put that little screw one in the top corner of this nut and bolt. So what we're going to do before we put all this lot on, we're going to give it a spray with Crown rust proofing, drink up, both lever controls, so it does get a chance of getting some lubrication on it. To put the bottom bolt in near the air in this vent pipe, I just use a very small extension on a 1/4 drive, so you can get your fingers in and turn it, and then fasten it up with a little dumpy baby 1/4 drive. It works really, really well. Why did you do it like that, Mike? Because I found out the ball in there was knackered, the one that locks on, and kept dropping off, so I couldn't use that. Good for getting off, but not for getting back on. Right, so what we've got to do now is go through all these bits and pieces here. See, there's a clip missing off there. We've got to put new clips on, find all the bolts, and like I say, get that pipe in. Now, you've probably seen me do this before. I might take the camera in, I might not. No, I don't want. Heat it up with a hot air gun, and the spring will expand and make this longer. Guarantee. Look how long it is now. Wait a minute. what can we show you by comparison? There, right, you see? There, there's a gap here. I'm going to warm this up and I'll show you what it looks like. Well, it didn't stretch all that much, but it did stretch a bit. But that little bit makes all the difference. You can see it's longer. Anyway, I have to fit this before I fit the control for the heater, I think. No. I have to fit the heater control first and then struggle on to get this in. There, I'll just give it a quick squirt of crown rust proofing on the cables and things like this. So now we can put the heater control handle, or the warm-ish air blower handle. There you go, you see, now the tube's in. Drop it into the heater duct first, then bring it up and put it onto here. Fits like a dream. Bit of crown rust proofing and it slips right on. So now we've got to put these control boxes on this 10AS alarm and this little thing here, which we have no idea what it does. Fog lamp unit relay. That goes up to there. And the other one goes on here somehow. I can't quite see the screw holes. Darn. I'll have to have a look at the plastic one. Getting the 10AS alarm in and now, it's really tricky because it's got some very small screws and they're really deep down inside. I thought it was on the plastic. Screwdriver, one of these magnetized, demagnetized things here. Put it through the magnetizer bit a few times and then your screw won't fall off. Top tip. Well, I was struggling to get those little screws back in for the alarm with this screwdriver because I couldn't quite turn it, so I ended up using a quarter drive socket on a quarter extension and using one of these longer screwdriver bits, and I managed to get it in. It's not tricky, and I had to use the magnetic thing because I dropped the screw a couple of times, but that now is in, so now we can fit this bar. I think when I took the alarm off I didn't have the steering lock in, which would have made life a lot more interesting. So now we're going to put this in and then we can start to get this bad boy boxed up. Right, we've got the bottom strengthening piece in. Strengthening. There are two screws, so one of them goes behind here, so I had to take this off again. There's supposed to be a screw and a plastic nut holding this together, but really it was missing. I don't really know what it's going to do. So the next thing we're going to do is put the cowling back on whilst we've got some room to manoeuvre. This is the very early style. The nuts are just pressed in pieces of brass, like with a knurl on the outside, and of course as you tighten it up they come undone. And I've got to notice that there are two in the bottom of here, so that's alright, but the front ones here, there's one missing and that one's right at the very end. What a poor idea. Like I say, in the later ones these were sort of filled with like a smaller plastic diameter, so you just put a regular screw in. I don't know why I never thought of that before. Anyway, let's get that on. Like I say, it's easy to do it now than fighting with it when the dash is in. And then we'll have a battle to try and get the speedo cable in. Unfortunately, trying to get the speedo cable back in, we're limited by length. This won't come through anymore. I usually like to have them coming right out here, then we can clip them in. So we're going to have a bit of a fun with that. But once we've got that cowl in, I'll slip all this lot back in and we'll try and get the speedo in. This is where you need your great big long fingers. I'll turn this off because there might be some swearing. Actually, it wasn't too bad. Just clipped straight in. Now I've noticed on here they've put a hole, a great big hole, and it used to have a captive nut on there, but I don't know if you're supposed to put a captive nut on it, you know, those spring clips. I think I'll get some and then I'll work this out. These are the things I was talking about, these things, you know, I have boxfuls of them all over, different sizes and screws, so they didn't come with them, but I've put some in here. I put one in here, it fitted nice, and I guess that's why they give us an Allen key to adjust this, so it pulls the thing tight. I've also replaced them at the bottom because they were all broken. It's funny the tabs haven't broken off. Amazing, isn't it? Right, let's get that side on, then we can get this boxed in. Well, that's the binnacle in. It's nice and flush at the top. This piece here though kicks up, this thing here, and there's no way of adjusting it because there's a screw there and a screw there. I don't know what's happened with that, and I don't really want to stretch it. That was alright. Now I'm going to fit the bottom cowl in. You probably noticed here that the screws have snapped off, you know, like the guides. It's supposed to have a little guide and a bushing in there, rather like that thing, you know, but it's snapped off. So what we do is put a big spreader washer into there. Also what's usually missing is the bolt that goes in here that attaches to your steering column, your steering lock. Apart from that, yeah, no, everything's missing alright. So get that on and that's done, and the steering wheel on, job done. Let's see what it looks like at the end. There you are, couple of hours, done. Like I said, there's no screws in the front. I've got it all fastened up nice and tight now. Shouldn't be a problem, but no doubt there will be once you drive it down the road and something rattles off. I don't know, they're not a particularly good idea. Cheap and cheerful. They're made out of the worst plastic imaginable. I know these cars are old, but this ABS is so brittle. You know, everything's brittle on it, that's why it all breaks. Anyway, we're going to put the steering wheel on. We're going to take it for a ride down the road with, you know, just with the steering wheel in a loose position, not with the nut on, and then once we find out, we can take our hands off the wheel on a straight piece of road and put it back on its right place. That's the easiest way to do it. So now I've got to battle on to do this timer thing. Well, it's 11:30 now. Clean up here. You know, one of the worst things about this is, like I said, next week you'll have to take it off because there's something missing or a bulb's gone on. You know, but it's not too bad a design. You know, for the binnacle part, I mean, everything lined up, so it was pretty good. But they didn't tell you about putting speed clips in here, because you can't put a nut and bolt in. Right, binnacle done.